Peace to the 12, man. Y'all know what it is. Y'all see the title. Black Jews in Early Europe. I'm going to say it one more time. Black Jews in Early Europe. And today we're going to be looking at the literary work of an historian that's actually still alive this time by the name of Tudor Parfitt. He's a British historian and writer. Tudor Parfitt is a British historian, writer, broadcaster, traveler, and adventurer. He specializes in the study of Jewish communities and Judaizing communities around the world, particularly in Africa, Asia, and the Americas, and the development of issues about the construction of race, right? He was born in 1944. He's actually still alive. And he wrote a book. I've actually referenced this guy before, but this isn't the book that I referenced. The book I referenced was called Hybrid Hate. But this book we're going to be looking at this time is called Black Jews in Africa and the Americas by Tudor Parfitt, right? And this is going to be probably a long video, even though I'm only going to use 3 pages of this book. This page right here, then I'm going to go to another page. Where is it at? Anyway, we'll get to that when we get to there. But anyway, so we're gonna get straight to it, right? So let's get to the title of the video, Black Jews in Early Europe, and let's see what he has to say in this book, Black Jews in Africa and the Americas by Tudor Parfitt. We're going to go to page 4, and we're going to go to the highlighted portion for sake of time, like I always do. A long European tradition maintained that the Jews in general were certainly black, metaphorically, in the sense that they were diabolical and evil. When he says metaphorically, as most of you know, metaphor means a figure of speech, you know, like an allegory, a parable, a trope, not literal, right? You know, so people can say, "Oh, look, that means it wasn't metaphoric." Well, let's see what it says after that. It says, "A long European tradition maintained that Jews in general were certainly black, metaphorically." But then look at this other part. It says, "as well as black, literally." So they were being called black, literally. All right, what does literal mean? If one thing is metaphoric and the other one literal, literal means it's true, right? Letter for letter, word for word. They were literally called black. Then he says, one Christian critic of the supposedly Jewish Pope Anacletus II, elected in 1130 AD, hinted that Jews were generally regarded as dark when he noted that the Pope was dark and pale, more like a Jew or an Arab than a Christian. Right? Sir William Brereton, born in 1604, the English parliamentarian, soldier, and writer, happened to visit a Sephardi synagogue in Amsterdam when he commented that the Jews were very dark-skinned and lascivious. They were most black and insatiably given on to women. In his new voyage to Italy, 1714, Francois Maximilian Mission, the French writer and traveler, confirms that the general supposition was that Jews were black, when he noted that all Jews were black, although only Portuguese Jews started off black. Right? I actually have that literary work with me, the New Voyage to Italy. So he said a lot there. He said that the Jews were called black metaphorically, and they were also called it literally. Then he gives you instances of people that said that they were dark-skinned. Then you have instances where they say that they were black. So what I'm going to do now, because he mentioned Portugal, I'm going to go through what I've went through before in previous videos, and we're going to talk about the black Jews of Portugal, and I'm going to prove to you guys that these black Jews of Portugal were literally black and actually black. All right, dark-skinned people. So let's go to the book he quoted first, Maximilian Mission, in his book, A New Voyage to Italy. Right, A New Voyage to Italy, and it's actually a long title. We're going to go to page 139, where it reads, "'Tis also a vulgar error that the Jews are all black, for this is only true of the Portuguese Jews, who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves, and consequently the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race." So he's telling you straight up that the Portuguese Jews were in fact black. Now, what people do is they say, "Oh, that's not literal. It's talking about they had a tan," or it's talking about, no, it's talking about that they were black, dark-skinned people. And I'm going to prove that. Let's go to another book by Tobias Smollett, The Critical Review or Annuals of Literature, Volume 57. We're gonna go to page 141, and I brought this out before. We're gonna read it. It says King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas. Now, this island of St. Thomas is off the coast of West Africa. It's an island off the coast of West Africa, which had been discovered in 1471 into other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. And from these banished Jews, the black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luango, who are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended. See that? So, talked about the black Portuguese, and he talked about the black Portuguese Jews, and he talked about the Jews in Luango. So let's deal with the Jews in Luango as well and see what their connection is to the black Portuguese Jews, right? So speaking of Luango, well, where is Luango at? Well, for those of you that don't know, Luango is it was a part in pre-colonial Africa of what you would call the Republic of Congo, Southern Gabon, and Cabinda, right? So it's in the Congo region in Central Africa, right? And he said the Jews of Luango, remember? He said the black Portuguese, as they're called, and the Jews in Luango. Let's see the connection between the Jews in Luango and the black Portuguese Jews. So let's go to this book by the French geographer Conrad Malt Brun. This guy was born in 1775. Let's see what he had to say in his book, his literary work, Universal Geography, or a Description of All the Parts of the World, Volume 4. We're going to go to page 309, where it reads, A fact worthy the attention of travelers is that black Jews, according to Allendorp, the kingdom of Luango contains black Jews scattered throughout the country. They are despised by the Negroes, who do not even deign to eat with them. They are occupied in trade and keep the Sabbath so strictly that they do not even converse on that day. They have a separate burying ground very far from any habitation. The tombs are constructed with masonry and ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions. So this is an account right here of the black Jews of Luango, right, who are despised by other Africans. Then when we read down, it says, Mr. Eberman, finding it impossible to explain the origin of these Jews, doubts the reality of the fact. See, that's a doubter, right? But look at this. Bushing, however, Michaelis, and Zimmerman do not hesitate to admit their existence. That's out of the mouth of three witnesses. The matter is established, despite the guy who disagreed. Bruns considers them the descendants of Fulashas of Habish or Abyssinia, and Springle wishes them to be considered as the descendants of the Portuguese Jews. So yeah, one of these guys, they said, nah, these Luango Jews are just like the Portuguese Jews. That's why he says he called them the descendants, right? Who having quitted their country are no longer afraid to profess openly the religion of their fathers, right? So one of them wanted these Luango Jews, these black Jews, to be considered the Portuguese Jews. If that was the case, that would mean that the Portuguese Jews were also black. Let's get some more on the Luango Jews. Let's go to the Nautical Magazine and Naval Chronicle for 1870. We're going to go to page 529. And it reads, let me get a drink of water real quick. And it reads, Luango family. The inhabitants of Luango do not differ materially from those of the Gabon and Cape Lopez. It is probable that the Jewish type of character above mentioned forms a larger element of population here than it does on the Pongo coast. And this it was doubtless which led the Roman Catholic missionaries who labored here during the 16th and 17th centuries to the conclusion that they had found black Jews in Luango. You know, just for a reference, before I continue on, there's a lot of people out there which, really it's just because they hate the truth and they hate the so-called black man being the chosen seed line. But there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, you guys are making all this up. There's no evidence. All this stuff is pre-modern. I'm giving you works from 1492. I'm giving you works from the 1700s. And these people are all saying, yeah, there were some black Jews, right? In Luango, which is in the Republic of Congo in Central Africa, right? Now let's go down to here. Let me go back. It says, Roman Catholic missionaries labored during the 16th and 17th centuries to the conclusion that they had found the black Jews in Luango, right? Now it says 16th and 17th century, so that's 1500s and 1600s. They said, yeah, these are the black Jews in Luongo. It says Barbet states that in the reign of Don John II, we quoted that a while ago, in the reign of Don John II and about the close of the 15th century, large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of southern Guinea, that the island of St. Thomas, right? So, again, they mentioned the black Portuguese Jews from the island of St. Thomas with the Luongo Jews of the Republic of Congo, right? Now, let's get another example to show you that, yes, in fact, the black Portuguese Jews were, in fact, black. We're going to go to this book by Samuel Kokor Bartlett. This book is called Sources of History in the Pentateuch. The word Pentateuch simply just means 5 books. Let's see what he had to say about these black Jews of Portugal. We're going to go to page 118 of Sources of History in the Pentateuch. Page 118. It says, thus, the black color is found not only in individuals as the black Jews of Portugal. See, the black color is found in the black Jews of Portugal, but in tribes as the Bakaris or the Basharis on the Red Sea, whose hair and character are perfectly Semitic. Right? So he says not only is the black color found in the black Jews of Portugal, but also in the Basharis tribe on the Red Sea. Well, let's see what the Basharis tribe looks like. This is the Bakaris tribe. Right? This is the Bakaris tribe in an Egyptian village. This is the Bakaris tribe. As you can see, they have the complexion of a so-called black man, the dark skin. Right, let's go to another source by John L. Gilby, born in 1600. He wrote a book called America Being the Latest and Most Accurate Description of the New World. Right, we're going to go to his book. We're going to go to page 574. We're going to read what he has to say about the Portuguese Jews. We're going to go to page 574 where it reads, the Portuguese that dwelt on this island informed the Netherlanders that few lived above 50 years there, yet notwithstanding the great gain sent to them to tarry, several of them having 200 or 300 Negroes that worked in the sugar mills. That John III, King of Portugal, sent a colony thither about 200 years before. See that? This is, once again, when John sent those people off of the island of Portugal. Not the island of Portugal, off of the country of Portugal, to the island of St. Thomas. Whom thou, what does it say, unwholesome air destroyed, yet the place was not desolate, for he sent new inhabitants, who first settled in Guinea, next in Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, that so they might be better used to the air, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves that refused to embrace the Roman religion, and caused the children to be baptized, from whom coming thither most great numbers. Most of the present inhabitants were descended. So he's saying most of the present inhabitants are descended from the black Portuguese that were expelled by King John, right? That he sold those Jews for slaves, right? And it said them having 200 or 300 Negroes that worked in the sugar mills, right? That John III, King of Portugal, has sent inhabitants there. See that? Once again, let's get another account from Andrew Bryce. Guy born in 1690. He's an English printer and writer. Andrew Bryce, 1690. Let's see what he had to say. In his book, The Grand Gazetter, or Topographic Dictionary, etc. We're going to go to page 622. And we're going to go down. And it reads, Jesvies River and Village in Negro Land. Now, for those of you that know Negro Land, I should have put it on this video, but I didn't. But the Negro Land map, where it has Judea Terum, and it says Land of the Jews. There's another map you can look up by Livio Sanudo. He was a cartographer in the 1500s, and he also had a map of Africa, and he had a land where Negro Land is at, and he called it the Land of the Jews. Right? I've done it before. I've done it in other videos. I can go watch them. If you ask me in the comment section, I'll send you a link to the video where I covered that. But anyway, so Jesvies River in the village of Negro Land. The river lies to north and northeast of Bifal Isle. I don't know how to say that. The village 65 long, about its month to east, and 40 furlongs to river. This is giving basically coordinates, like latitudes and longitudes. Anyway, check this out. The people inhabiting its banks are partly Biafars and idolaters, partly Mandingos or Mohammedans. Check this out. This is about the Portuguese. The Portuguese have a factory on the banks. The village contains near 4,000 inhabitants, among whom not above 10 or 12 families of whites. The rest, all tawny or black, though they style themselves true Portuguese, right? So out of the 4,000 inhabitants of the Portuguese people, out of the 4,000 inhabitants, there was only 10 to 12 families of whites. And the rest of them were tawny or black. By tawny, it means brown or black complected, right? Really light brown to dark brown. And they styled themselves as true Portuguese. Why? Because they are the Portuguese Jews. Now it said 10 to 12 families of those were whites, right? So that would mean, I looked up what constitutes a family. A family is 2 or more people. So that means that out of the 4,000 inhabitants, only 20 to 30 probably were white, right? Because if we add it up, it says 10 to 12 families. So 10 times 2 is 20. 12 times 12, or 12 times 2 is 24. So we're going to just say 20 to 30 out of 4,000. And the rest of them were black or tawny. And they styled themselves as the true Portuguese. Like I said, the Portuguese Jews, right? The rest of the families were so-called black people, right? Let's touch on some more evidence on the Portuguese Jews, what they look like. And we're going to touch on the so-called Arab Moors, and then we're going to define the word Moor, right? And just for a little history lesson real quick. They say the Moors ruled the Iberian Peninsula for 800 years. Moors from North Africa helped the first Islamic empire invade Iberia in 711. Once Al-Andalus was established, more and more Moors migrated to Iberia and lived there for almost 800 years. While they controlled the majority of the peninsula, they still permitted people to follow Christianity or Judaism if they paid a tax. Now, that's just a little brief history. Now we're going to go with the Portuguese Jews, look like Arab Moors. First, let's go back real quick to the beginning of this, where it read in this page 4 of Black Jews in Africa and the Americas, where it read, where was it at? It said, hinted that Jews were generally regarded as dark when he noted that the Pope was dark and pale, more like a Jew or an Arab than a Christian. We're going to touch on that Arab-like sentiment, right? But first, let's go to this book called The Methuans of Portugal, 1691 to 1708. The Methuans in Portugal. And this guy was written by A.D. Francis, and he's going to say something about the Jews in relation to the Moors and complexion, right? He's going to say on page 10, William Bromley, who visited Lisbon in 1693, said that in spite of the persecution of Jews and New Christians are Jews that were forced to convert to Catholicism, Christianity, and worship fake white Jesus, right? These people still formed a third of the population, and many of them looked as swarthy as Moors, right? This is going to be important in a minute. So he said that the Jews and Christians formed a third of the population of Lisbon, and many of them were as swarthy as the Moors, right? So they had the same complexion as the Moors, right? Well, let's see what the complexion of the Moors is. Let's go to this book by Eobo Tozy, written in 1715, or he was born in 1715, and the book is called The Present State of Europe, exhibiting a view of the natural and civil history of the several countries and kingdoms to which is prefixed an introductory discourse on the principles of polity and government, volume 1. All right, so we're going to go to this book, The Present State of Europe. We're going to page 18. This is what he says about the Moors. But the difference of the bodies and faces of people in different countries is scarcely greater than that of their idea of beauty, meaning different countries have different standards of beauty. Now watch what he says about the Moor. Thus the Moors place it. What is it? The beauty. Thus the Moors place it in the blackness of their faces. So the Moors found beauty in the blackness of their face. Right? Thus the Moors place it in the blackness of their faces. The Chinese and Kalmucks in a flat visage. The Omegas, a people of South America, pressed the forehead of their newborn children between two boards in order to more affectionately give them the odd figure. So these are different versions of standards of beauty, but notice the Moors found beauty in the blackness of their faces. Right? Let's see what else he had to say about the Moors. We're going to jump to page 10. I'm at page 18. Now we're going to jump to page 171, where he's talking about the country of Spain. We're going to go down to here in the highlighted portion, right? Let's see what time. We're making good time, 20 minutes. All right, so it says Spain, having been successfully possessed by so many foreign people, the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Romans, the Vandals, the Suevi, the Alani, afterwards by the Visigoths, and lastly by the Moors, among whom were great numbers of Jews. So among the Moors were great numbers of Jews, right? It is easily seen that generally considered the Spaniards must be a very mixed kind of people, but the descendants of these several people did not equally stand their ground, one being overpowered and subdued by another. The Romans expelled the Carthaginians, the Vandals, Suevi, and Alani after disposing the Romans with great slaughter, met with the like treatment from the Visigoths, meaning Spain's been conquered by various people. That's what it's telling you. The Visigoths, and these could not withstand the invasion of the Moors, though they were not totally exterminated or driven out of the country, such numbers remaining that they again took up arms against the conquerors, and in long succession of years partly subdued them and partly compelled them to return to Africa, their mother country. Thus the Visigoths are the main flock of the Spanish nation, and a considerable mixture of descendants from the Moors, a few from the Romans and Suevi, and fewer still from the Jews, and the fewest of all from the ancient inhabitants. Right? So he said a lot there. First of all, he said that the Moors found beauty in the blackness of their faces. Then he said the Moors conquered Spain, right? And he said among the Moors were a great number of Jews. And he says that Spain is a mixed multitude due to many invasions, right? Now let's get to another example of them talking about it being a mixed multitude in Spain. We're going to go to Laura Juno, the Duchess of Abrantes. She was born in 1784. We're going to go to the book. We're going to go to the book Memoirs of the Emperor Napoleon, from Ajaccio to Waterloo, a soldier, emperor, husband, right? I think it's volume 1 that we're going to want. I believe so. I believe it's volume 1. It might be volume 2. I don't remember. But we're going to go to page 281, and we're going to read what it says. It says, on entering Portugal from Spain, the traveler is forcibly struck with the difference between the two countries. The dark eyes, the black hair, and brown complexion are the only traits of resemblance between the Portuguese and Spaniards. The Portuguese have thick lips, noses something of the Negro form, black and often curly hair, and their figures and above all their hands show signs of mixed blood. That's another example of a mixed multitude. In Spain, the people, in spite of their dark complexion and eyes, have at least a European look. On entering Portugal, the traveler is, however, agreeably surprised by finding himself among a more cultivated people. So that was just another account of mixed people in like the place of Portugal, right? Now, that being said, we went to the Moors because we talked about the Moors in brief. The Moors had a great number of Jews among them. They conquered Spain. They found beauty in the blackness of their faces, right? And eventually they were expelled from Spain. Now we're going to touch on, let's define the word Moor according to old dictionaries and encyclopedias. So old dictionaries and old encyclopedias. Let's see what a Moor means. But first, let's get the modern definition. And let me show you why the modern definition is irrelevant. So words change their meanings over time. We're going to go to the word Moor, especially when the devil is at work. Right? So if I type in on Google the word moor, it'll say an expanse of open, rolling, and fertile land, a boggy area. That's what they say a moor means, right, in modern times, right? Or if I go to the New World Encyclopedia, it'll say, moor in English uses a Moroccan, formerly a member of the Muslim population of Al-Andalus, now Spain and Portugal, right? So that's what moor means in modern times. But what does moor mean in old dictionaries and old encyclopedias, right? Well, let's see what the word really means. So first we're going to go to Samuel Johnson, a guy who was born in 1709. And we're going to go to Samuel Johnson's dictionary. Now, this is what the word moor means in Samuel Johnson's dictionary. Moor, it does mean a marsh. Let's go to the second definition. Moor, a Negro, a blackamoor, Moorish, Latin. So Moor does mean a Negro or a blackamoor. So if the Jews resembled the Moors, that means the Jews resembled the Negro. Well, let's get other examples. We're going to go to the anthropologist David McRitchie, guy born in 1851. Anthropology simply means the study and origin of development of human societies and cultures, right? So we're going to go to Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 by David McRitchie, right? And we're going to go to page 46 of that book, and then we're going to read the highlighted portion where it reads, any Latin dictionary, any old one at least, will tell you that Morris is a moor, a blackamoor, or a tawny moor, and Shakespeare used the word moor as a synonym for Negro, right? As the last word bears nowadays a somewhat restricted meaning, it may be better to take old-fashioned blackamoor as nearest English rendering of Morris, signifying thereby any black or brown-skinned man, right? So right there, moor was used interchangeably for a Negro, meaning the same, synonym for a Negro, synonym meaning the same. We're going to go to John Ogilvie. He's a Scottish lexicographer, born in 1797. We're going to go to his Imperial Dictionary of the English Language. We're going to see what it says, right, about a moor. Now, this is what the Imperial Dictionary says about a moor, written in the 1700s. It says moor, moros, a moor, probably from Moorish, black or dark colored, a native of the northern coast of Africa, called by the Romans Mauritania, the country of dark complexioned people, right? So moor does in fact mean black or dark colored in this Imperial Dictionary. Let's keep going. Let's go to John Wilkes. Another guy born in the 1700s, right? We're going to go to his Encyclopedia Londinus, Universal Dictionary of Arts, Sciences, and Literature. We're going to go to page 754. We're going to go down here to the word moor, and we're going to scroll down. It says moor, Moorish, Latin, moro, black, Negro, a blackamoor, right? I shall answer that by better than you can in getting up of the Negro's belly, the moor. Right, so another example of moor being synonymous with a Negro. Right, let's go to another one. We're going to go to John Entick, guy born in 1703. John Entick wrote his own dictionary. It's the New English Latin Dictionary by John Entick. We're going to go here. It says a moor, Ethiopian, moor, Ethiops, Moorish, right? So he says a moor is an Ethiopian or Moorish, right? Now, for those that don't know, Ethiops, because he uses the word Ethiops, Ethiops means Ethiops, Ethiopia, or archaic words for burnt face. It may refer to Ethiopia, an ancient term for parts of Africa. Right? So moor is synonymous with Ethiopian, burnt face, right? As a matter of fact, the word moor and Ethiopian are linked in certain Bibles. I'll prove that now. We're going to open up a certain Bible. First, we'll go to the King James Version where it says Zephaniah 2:12. In Zephaniah 2:12, it says, Ye Ethiopians, ye shall also be slain. Ye Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by my sword. So it reads Ethiopians. And in other versions of the Bible, it says Cushites, Ethiopians. Cushites or Ethiopians. That's pretty much what it says most of the time. But in certain Bibles, like the Geneva Bible, for example, and the important, just to highlight the significance of the Geneva Bible, It was used in the foundation of the American colonies. It was the Bible used in Jamestown and the preferred Bible of the early pilgrim settlers of New England, the Geneva Bible. Well, the Geneva Bible doesn't use the word Ethiopian, and it doesn't use the word Cushite. It uses the word Moor. We're going to prove that. We're going to go to the Geneva Bible, the 1599 edition. We're going to go to page 12. Page 12. Verse 12, Zephaniah 2 and 12. It doesn't say Ethiopians. It says, ye Moorians also shall be slain by my sword with them. It says ye Moorians. It doesn't say Ethiopian. It says ye Moorians, right? And there's other versions as well. The Geneva Bible of 1587 says Moorians. Bishop's Bible of 1568 says Moorians. Coverdale Bible of 1535 says Morias, right? Now, what does the word Moorian mean? Let's see. Moorian simply means a Moor. So a Moorian is a Moor, and that was used to replace the word Ethiopian. So Ethiopian was replaced with Moorian, right, which simply means a Moor, right? Letting you know that Moor equals black in ancient times. Let's continue. Moorian, I typed in Google. Moorian means black. It's from Epoch Magazine. It says the word Moorian, meaning an individual with black skin color, used by Vinci to describe toxin, is attested for as early as the 16th century in Swedish dictionaries. However, the presence of individuals of African ancestry in Sweden predates the term. Yes, they do. I'll do a video on Sweden at some other time. Even ChatGPT knows this. I ChatGPT'd it. I said, is Mavro the Greek word for the word Moor? It says, yes, you are correct. Mavro is the Greek word for black, right? So the Greek word for Moor, black, and it's sometimes used to refer to the Moor, especially in the context of dark or black soil. The connection between the Greek word Mavro and the English word Moor is linguistic and involves a similarity in the color-related aspects of the terms. So it means black. Right? Even to this day, Mavro in the name doctor means more dark-skinned. Dark color of the skin, more. Browning, burnishing, burned. Right? Let's get some scriptures that also speak about the Israelites and their skin complexion. Let's get some biblical usage. We're going to go to Songs of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. I pull this all the time. This Song of Solomon 1 and 5. We'll get the KJV version first. I am black, but comely. O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. So they tell you, I am black, but comely. I mean, they tell you that's their skin, and they say it's as the tents of Kedar. Let's show you what the tents of Kedar look like. These are the tents of Kedar, right here. As the tents of Kedar, well, these are the tents of Kedar. Other versions of this same verse, I am black but comely. As the tents of Kedar, I am dark but lovely. I am black and beautiful. I am black but lovely. All right? These are the tents of Kedar. Now we're going to go to Songs of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 6. It says, look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. Other versions, I am dark because I am darkened by the sun. The sun has darkened my skin. I am dark. The sun has gazed upon me, right? I am black, right? Yes, black people get darker in the sun. These are so-called black people with tan lines. Look at this. This is like a tawny brown skin. In the sun line, he became black. See that? Black by the sun. Let's get another example. Let's go to Lamentations, chapter 5, verse 10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Other versions, the famine has blackened our skin. Our skin is black like an oven. See that? Let's go to Job 30:30. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with the heat. Right? Meaning he was darkened. And that same, and Herodotus said the same thing. Herodotus, known as the father of history. Herodotus, the historian, in his book, The Histories, says something similar to Job 30:30, where he says, my skin is black and my bones are burned with the heat. He said this about the Egyptians. He says, the people dwelling there, the Egyptians, are black because of the heat. See that? And that's from The Histories, Book 2, Section 22 by Herodotus. Shout out to that brother, what's his name? Coeli Micah. I don't know if I'm saying your name correct. But, and also the N-word is in the Bible as well. We'll go to Acts 13:1 to prove that. Where it reads, now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, and it's really pronounced the N-word, and Lucius of Cyrene and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. Right? So this word Niger First of all, Simon's a Hebrew name. This was a Hebrew, right? And it means hearkening or listening, right? And Niger, an Eastern Bible Dictionary, means black, a surname of Simon. He was probably so called from his dark complexion, meaning he had a black complexion. Niger equals black, surname of the prophet Simon, right? And how you really pronounce it, Strong's definition, Niger. See that? It's really the N word. Of Latin origin, black, Niger, right? Acts 13:1, the black man, called the black. So yes, Simon was a dark-skinned man, right? And for those of you who don't know, the word Niger, it eventually evolved into the N-word, the infamous N-word, right? Because the N-word is derived from the Latin word Niger. See that? Simple as that. Well, I'm at it, let's get the complexion of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. His real name is yahawashi Hamashiach. We'll go to Daniel 10:6, which reads, his body was like the beryl, and his face is the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in the color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. Right? Daniel 10:6. Now it says his feet in color was like polished brass. First of all, why only could you see his feet? Because in the ancient world we wore garments similar to like when you see the Jedi, right? In the Star Wars movie, which by the way, the word Jedi goes back to the word Jew. I did a video on that, but or not Jew, but it goes back to the word Israelite. There was even an Israelite named Jediah. But anyway, it says his feet was the color of polished brass. Why could you only see his feet? Because back in the ancient world, we wore long garments, meaning what? A lot of our skin wasn't exposed, but he clearly had on sandals. That's why you could see his feet, right? But it says his feet like onto polished brass. Other versions, it doesn't say polished brass. It says burnished bronze, right? Just like we go to Revelations 1:15, and it says in his feet like on the fine brass, as if they burned in the furnace, and his voice is the sound of many waters. Other versions, it says burnished bronze, burnished bronze, burnished bronze, burnished bronze, burnished bronze. This is the color of burnished bronze, right? This is the color of burnished bronze, according to Google. It's dark brown. So Yahawashi had this complexion, right? So that's the first part of the. Like I said, this is gonna be a long video off 3 pages. That was the first part. We're gonna go to the other pages as well. That was the first part of Black Jews in Africa and in the Americas, page 4. Now let's continue on. Let's go to the other 2 pages, right? Let's go to the other 2 pages. 1 second. Bear with me. Here we go. The other 2 pages. The Color of the Jews, page 5 of the same book. This is what he's going to say. He says, Jews had absorbed something in these attitudes and perceived themselves as being significantly darker than their neighbors, and accepted the argument that as part of the divine plan and as a kind of retribution for their sins, they had been gradually darkened by the intervention of the Almighty until they were almost black. So this is what they say that they believed. I make the argument that they were always dark-skinned. But this was the position of Isaac ben Judah Abravanel in 1437 to 1508. The Portuguese Jewish statesman, exegete, and financier who observed that once long ago that the Jews had been light-skinned, as the Mishnah maintains. Yeah, we're going to touch on the Mishnah in a minute. And I do not believe in the Talmud, but I do use the Talmud for reference to show you what they believe in, as well as to substantiate certain things. I'll explain that in a minute. But Mishnah maintains, but they had grown dark as part of the punishment of exile. Right? This I didn't highlight this, but I'll include it. This is madness. This is funny though. This is read this. It says the 13th century polemical text of R. Rabbi Yosef ben Nathan Offiziel sought to rebuke Christian charges that Jews were dark and unattractive. He says, why? The text reads, why are the majority of Gentiles white and attractive, while the majority of Jews are black and ugly? The writer explained this through an analogy of ripening fruit. Plums and sloes, who he argued, are white at the start and become dark when they are ripe, whereas fruits like apples or apricots, which are red to start, are ripe, or which are ready to start, with finish up white and shrivel. This is seen as meaning the Jews who had no contact with the red of menstrual blood at the moment of their conception, as Jews refrain from sexual intercourse during the menstrual period, will finish up black. will finish up black. Whereas Christians who do not avoid the red of menstrual blood during sexual intercourse will finish up white like apples. So he was basically saying the reason why the Gentiles were white is because the heathens have intercourse with each other while their woman is on the rag, all right, on her menstrual cycle. I don't agree with that, but he did say though that the Jews finish up black. That's what he said. The same thought is expressed in the contemporary Sefer Yosef HaMakanah, which boasts that we Jews are from a clean and white seed. Therefore our faces are black, but you from the red seed of menstruation, therefore your visages are pale and reddened. So you had two different people. You had two different rabbis with this saying. But no, I don't agree with that. But this is funny. I just wanted to read that just cause. But continuing on. Actually, I'll come back to this. We're going to touch on the Mishnah. We're going to go into the Talmud, right? What is the Talmud? The Talmud is a central text of Rabbinic Judaism and the primary source of Jewish religious law and Jewish theology, right? We're going to go to the Talmud. And what's the Mishnah? The Mishnah is the first major written collection of the Jewish oral traditions that are known as Oral Torah. In its broadest sense, the Talmud is a set of books consisting of the Mishnah, repeated study, the Gemara, completion, and certain auxiliary materials. The Mishnah is a collection of originally oral laws supplementing scriptural laws. So this is the Mishnah in its relation to the Talmud. So in the Talmud, you have the Mishnah and the Gemara and some other auxiliary materials. Right? And the Talmud is one of the most important holy books of the Hebrew religion and of the world. I won't say that, but I'll say that the Talmud is important to modern people that practice modern Judaism. All right? Because again, I do not hearken to the Talmud, and most of my people who are Israelites like me, who profess themselves to be Israelites, we do not subscribe to the Talmud. But I do use the Talmud to show you what these people believe, and I also use it to substantiate something that would be in the Bible. Meaning what? We're going to go to something that was in the Mishnah. Now this is funny because them saying that now this is about to tell you that the Egyptians were black and ugly. And in them saying this, it's going to prove to you that the Israelites had to have been black as well, because the Egyptians or the Israelites were always mistaken for the Egyptians. Moses was an Israelite. He was a Levite. He was mistaken for an Egyptian. Joseph was mistaken for an Egyptian, and Apostle Paul was mistaken for an Egyptian. But anyway, let's get into the additions to Genesis 12 and 11 Torah study by the Rabbi Rashi, where he says in Genesis 19, and where is it at? Genesis Rabbi 44, still the real sense of the text, this, behold, now the time has come when I am anxious because of thy beauty. I have long known that thou art fair of appearance, but now we are traveling among black and repulsive people, brethren of the Ethiopians. So Rashi is saying, first of all, he's saying that Sarah was fair, which is a damn lie. I went over that before in another video. But he's saying that the brothers of the Ethiopians, which would be Mizraim, the Egyptians, are black and repulsive people. Let's go to the Midrash, Sarah Midrash and the Agadah, right? It says, we passed Aram Naharim and Aram Nahor, and we did not find a woman as beautiful as you. Now that we are entering a place of the ugly and the black, Egypt, right? And then he says Egypt is a place of the ugly and the black. So he's letting you know that the Egyptians are black, which they were. The ancient Egyptians were black. In Bereshit, Rabbah 40, it says ugly and swarthy people. In Torah study, it says black and ugly. The Egyptians, black and ugly. Right? So it says black and ugly. Now that's interesting that you would say that. That's interesting that you would say that. and I'll explain in a minute. We're going to go to another rabbi, Gerald Friedlander, and we're going to go to Pirkei Da Rabbi Eleazar 24, where he's going to tell you the sons of Ham are black. All right, we're going to read here. This is the commentary. We're going to chapter 24. It says Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. I'm going to get a drink. It says Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. Noah brought his sons and his grandsons, and he blessed them with their several settlements. And he gave them as an inheritance all the earth. He especially blessed Shem and his sons, making them dark but comely. Isn't that what we read about in Song of Solomon 1 and 5? I am black but lovely, dark but lovely. I am black and beautiful, right? So he's saying that the sons of Shem were brown skinned, right? And he gave them the habitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like the raven, meaning he made them very dark skinned, like a Sudanese man, right? I think the Sudanese are known as the darkest people in the world. And he gave them as an inheritance the coast of the sea. He blessed Japheth and his sons, making them entirely white, and he gave them for an inheritance the desert and his fields. First of all, I don't agree with that. You guys know my stance. Noah as well as his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were all brown-skinned people of various shades. I would say Japheth, I've done videos on this. Japheth of today would be the Australian Aboriginal and the Polynesian man. The Hamites, pretty self-explanatory, would be a lot of Eastern Africans, as well as Sudanese people. A lot of African tribes are Hamites, with the exception of the Israelites that are in parts of Africa scattered abroad, like the Igbo, the Limbo over there in South Africa, and things of that nature. But other than that, the rest of them would be Hamites. And that the Shemitic people are a various amount of people. The Shemitic people are the Edomites, which would be the so-called white man. The Semitic people would be the Arabs. It would be the Israelites. It would be the Elamites from Elam, so on and so forth. But anyway, off that little tangent, he says he blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like the raven. So Ham and his sons were made dark like the raven, right? And Ham is an Egyptian word which means black, right? According to the Eastern Bible Dictionary. And who are Ham's sons? Genesis 10 and 6 tells you the sons of Ham are Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan, right? Mizraim is the land of Egypt, right? So if one of the sons of Ham is Mizraim, which is Egypt, that would mean they were black. Pretty simple. But the reason I say that is because when they say that, that means that they expose a lot, because that means that Moses was black because Moses was mistaken for an Egyptian. Joseph was black because Joseph was mistaken for an Egyptian. I'll explain that in a minute. But first, I want to say the word Kemet, which some of you know what Egypt to be. Kemet is actually Kemet actually means black land, or land of the blacks. Kemet. In the ancient Egyptian language, it's translated to mean black land of the blacks, or the black land. Egyptian word for black. It's so funny too, because they'll say that Kemet means black land because of its soil. Meanwhile, when they say Ethiopia means black land, they say, oh, it's because they're black skinned. When they say Sudan, it means it's because they're black skinned. But somehow, some way, when Egypt says land of the blacks, it means, oh, it's because it's talking about the soil. Why? Because they got them Arab invaders that came through there in 640 AD to establish themselves in that land, and they have to push the narrative that that's always what the ancient Egyptians looked like, which couldn't be further away from the truth. Right? But yeah, and through Shem you get Arphaxad, which goes all the way down to Abraham, which is where you get Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the Israelites, the Edomites, the Ishmaelites, right? I've went over all that before. But anyway, these are the Shemitic peoples. Why does the complexion of the ancient Egyptians matter? I'll explain that. Why does the complexion of the ancient Egyptians matter? Because all throughout the Bible, Hebrews, Israelites were mistaken for ancient Egyptians, which means that the Israelites looked exactly like the ancient Egyptians. I'll give you the examples found when we go to Moses, right? You go to Moses, where are we at? We go to Moses, real name Masha. Some say Moshe. It'd be Masha in the Paleo Hebrew. But it just, I believe it just means to be drawn out, because Moses was drawn out of the water. You read about that in Exodus 2 and 10. But we're going to go to Exodus 2 and 15, and we're going to read that Moses was mistaken for an Egyptian. This is Exodus 2 and 15. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, and he dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priests of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel their father, he said, "Is it that you are come so soon today?" So Moses helped out those daughters of Reuel, right? Now this is what they said about Moses. He said, "Oh, you guys are home early." He says, "And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock." So they called Moses an Egyptian. All right, which means Moses looked like an Egyptian. Let's get the example of Joseph now. Now we know Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites by his brothers. You can read about that in Genesis 37 to 23 through 28. He was sold to the Ishmaelites, who eventually ended up selling him to the Midianites, or to the Midianites, who eventually sold him to Egypt, right? You read about that in Genesis 37 to 36. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt on the Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and the captain of the guard. Potiphar was an Egyptian. So Joseph was sold to the Egyptians, right? Now, in a time skip, when we get to Genesis 42 and 3, we're going to start at, we'll just read it all. Genesis 42 and 3. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob, sent not with his brethren. For he said, "Lest peradventure mischief befall him." And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan, right? And Joseph was the governor over the land, because Joseph had went from being a slave to a prisoner to a big dog, right? He became governor over the land of Egypt. I don't want to say big dog because I don't like to use the word dog. That's an insult. But he had glowed up, and Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but he made himself strange unto them and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, "Whence come ye?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." So Joseph's brothers go to visit him for supplies due to a famine that was in the land of Canaan. Joseph recognizes his brothers, but his brothers don't recognize Joseph. They just think that Joseph is another Egyptian, right? So when we go to Genesis 42 and 8, it says, "And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him, meaning they just thought Joseph was another Egyptian. But Joseph was in fact an Israelite, see that? So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. He recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. So Joseph would have had to look like an Egyptian. And according to their own sources, like the Talmud, they say that the sons of Ham were dark like the raven, right? And then they said that the Egyptians were black and ugly. So was Joseph black and ugly then by the definition? Now we go to Paul. Paul was also mistaken for an Egyptian when you read Acts 21 and 38, right? I'm going to start at 37, Acts 21 and 37. "And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness, 4,000 men that were murderers? But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people." So Paul was mistaken for an Egyptian, and he corrected the man. He said, "I'm no Egyptian, I am a Jew." Right? Once again, that goes into that. Now let's further prove it that the ancient Egyptians were so-called black people. Let's prove that by going into the pharaohs, because there's misinformation getting out there about pharaohs, and that the only pharaohs that were black was the 25th dynasty. Let's go. We're going to go into that. So I typed in Google, "Were the Egyptians black?" It says the claim that all Egyptians or even all the pharaohs were black is not valid. Most scholars believe that the Egyptians in antiquity looked pretty much as they look today, with a graduation of darker shades toward the Sudan. That's what they say. This is a damn lie. Like I told you, Egypt was invaded by various people, the Greeks, the Romans, and in 640 AD, the Arabs made their way up in there, right? So they mixed all up in there. But it is true that all the pharaohs were not black, yeah, because they were ruled over by the Hellenists, Greeks, all type of things, right? Alexander of Macedon made it over there. Anyway, and then it'll say the 25th dynasty. It says the Cushite rulers were crowned as kings of Egypt. They were the pharaohs of Egypt in the 25th dynasty, the black pharaohs, right? And that's why you have people that say, oh, the pharaohs look like this and like that, right? But that's simply not the case. They're hiding something, right? Because all the pharaohs don't look like this, and I'll prove it. We'll go to Pharaoh Narmer. Pharaoh Narmer, he was the first pharaoh ever of the first dynasty. Narmer was the ancient Egyptian pharaoh in the early dynastic period. And we're going to go here. King Menes, facts. Egypt toured. This is Pharaoh Menes, right? You can already see the Negro features, right? Here's a picture of Pharaoh Narmer, and here's a picture of Mike Tyson. See that? He looks like Mike Tyson, right? Pharaoh Narmer, this is another one, right? And also, certain people even tell you that King Narmer was actually Nimrod to the Hebrews. That's what they say in certain things, all right? The parallels between the Bible, King Nimrod, Narmer, Nimrod is Narmer. See, there's people that say that out there. And of course, Nimrod is the son of Cush, which again is another son of Ham. And the word Cush means black in of itself. Let's prove that. Cushi, properly the Cushite means the Ethiopian. Cushi means dark-skinned person of African descent. Cushites, blackness, modern-day Sudan. Cushite man, smooth-skinned people. Cushi, Ethiopian, Cushan, their blackness. Right? Isn't that interesting that means their blackness? And isn't it interesting that Israelites were also named Cush? All right? Zephaniah's father was named Cushi, right? Which once again means their blackness. You had Cush the Benjamite in Psalm 7 and 1. He was also named Cush. Then you got Shelemiah. He was a son of Cushi. That's Jeremiah 36 and 14. So you had Israelites named Cushi. Isn't that interesting? But anyway, let's get back to the pharaohs. Let's once again prove that the pharaohs of ancient times were black. We're going to go to the second dynasty. This is Pharaoh Ninetjer, 2845 BC. This is Ninetjer, right? Just for point of reference, this is Ninetjer. This is the rapper KRS-One, right? Ninetjer, the rapper KRS-One. Look at the nose. Identical. And this hair right here, they say this is Ninetjer's hair. This is a hairstyle found in the Hamar tribe of Ethiopia. Same type of hairstyle. Exact same hairstyle, right? And they have clearly Negroid features, meaning the flash nose, flat root of the nose, narrow ears, narrow joints. Right? The Negroid features. That's Ninetjer's nose. He was in the second dynasty of Egypt. Let's go to Pharaoh Khufu of the fourth dynasty. This is Pharaoh Khufu of the fourth dynasty. Again, Negroid features. Clear as day. Pharaoh Menkaure in fourth dynasty. He's got the same hair of the Hamar tribe. Same type of hair. You can see it underneath the headdress, as well as Negroid features in general. This is Pharaoh Neferfre of the fifth dynasty. He's got waves in his hair, just like how the so-called black man stylizes waves in his hair now, showing you that there's no new thing under the sun. That's Ecclesiastes 1 and 9. The thing that hath been is that it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been. It has been already of old time, which was before us. So people been having waves in their hair. That ain't nothing new, man. Right? Pharaoh Nyusertuni, fifth dynasty. As you can see, once again, this is the rapper KRS-One. This is Nyuser, right? Same nose. Exactly. This is Pepi the first, the pharaoh, sixth dynasty. As you can see. So that's pretty easy right there, proving that the ancient Egyptians were in fact black, and that means that Paul was mistaken for an Egyptian, Joseph was mistaken for an Egyptian, and Moses was mistaken for an Egyptian, which means that they would have had to been black as well. Clear as day. But let's continue. Let's get one more thing in the Talmud before I move on. In the Talmud as well, there was another rabbi known as Rabbi Ishmael, born in 90 AD. And this is what he had to say about the complexion of the Jews in the Mishnah Nagaim 2. It says, Rabbi Ishmael says the children of Israel are like boxwood, neither black nor white, but an intermediate shade, meaning he's saying that the children of Israel are not Sudanese black and they're not white. They're like boxwood, meaning what? They're shade of brown, meaning what? The Israelites were different shades of brown, right? Just like you have African Americans that are different shades of brown as well. Carmine, almond, hazelnut, toffee, java, espresso, ebony, deep ebony, African American skin, and various skin tones, right? This would be the boxwood. But anyway, so let's go back to the book, because I want to touch on the fact that Jews had an African look according to this book as well. Let's go back, right? It reads, we'll go back to this highlighted part. It says, the idea that the Jews were black persisted into the 19th century. So this has been an idea that's been out there. Robert Knox, 1791, the controversial surgeon and an anatomist and conservator of the College Museum, Edinburgh, in the mid-19th century, commanded the African character of the Jew, his muzzle-shaped mouth and face removed in front of him from other races. The general look of the Jew was considered to be like that of the black. See that? The general look of the Jew was considered to be like that of the black. The contour is convex, the eyes long and fine, the outer angles running towards the temples, the brow and nose to form a single convex line, and the whole physiognomy, when swarthy, as it often is, has an African look. 19th century physical anthropologists in general assumed that Jews had a close racial, that is blood connection, with blacks. The general consensus of the ethnological literature of the late 19th century was that the Jews were black, or at least swarthy. See that? One such explained the predominant mouth of some Jews being the result of the presence of black blood, and that brown skin, thick lips, and prognosticism meaning the nose features, were typical of Jews. One of the key physical indicators of the race was the nose from the encyclopedias. All deviant noses were put together. The blacks, the Hottentots, and various peoples of Asia, such as the Jews. Let me show you who the Hottentots are real quick. The Hottentots are talking about the people of South Africa. The Hottentot, racial term used to describe the cocoa of South Africa. Right, so let's go back. The blacks, the Hottentots, and various people of blacks were of Asia, such as the Jews. In a sense, the appearance of the Jews and blacks was constructed in a similar way simply because both Jews and blacks were pariahs and outsiders in the racialized amount of Europe. This shared status implies that Jews and blacks had a shared look and a shared black color. In some cases, Jews were considered black because they were of mixed African Judaic race. On occasion, the blackness or darkness of the skin of African like the Jew. Right? So I just wanted to touch on that. Now we're going to go into the African look before we close out this video that it's talking about. Jews had a black African look, you say. Let's go to this book called Picture History of Jewish Civilization, written by Bezalel Narkis. And this is what the Israelites looked like in Egypt, according to him. As you can see, the brown, dark skin, the afro. This is in the same book, Pictorial History of Jewish Civilization. You see the afros, you see the brown skin, various shades of brown, intermediate shades, like boxwood. Let's get some more pictures. This is a study that was done called With and Without Straw, How Israelite Slaves Made Bricks, by Robert Littman, Marta Lorenzon, and Jay Silverstein. All of these are Caucasians and probably all Caucasian Jews. I don't really know that for a fact. I know Silverstein is for sure a so-called Jewish name. Nonetheless, this is what they said. This is a picture of the ancient Israelites making bricks. It says Nubian and Semitic slaves mix water and mud to create mud bricks, while a seated Egyptian official the upright oversees their work. Right? So it says Nubian and Semitic slaves. I don't even know if these are Nubian and Semitic slaves. I think that they're all Israelites, but let's just go with that for the sake of time. As you can see, they're different shades of brown again. Now let's go to different shades of brown again. Now let's go to the Lachish reliefs as well. For those that don't know, the Lachish reliefs are an Assyrian victory over the kingdom of Judah, right? The relief of Lachish. We're going to focus on this part right here, the Lachish reliefs. I'm going to zoom in on it in a minute. We're going to go to what they said they looked like according to other people. We're going to go to Edward Plumtree. He was an English divine and scholar, born in London, born in 1821. This is what he had to say about the Assyrian reliefs of Lachish. We're going to go to page 448 in his book, Assyrian and Babylonian Inscriptions and Their Bearing of the Old Testament Scriptures. And he says, it is significant that the captives are for the most part represented as having woolly hair, as though they had belonged to the Ethiopian army of Tirhakah. So he's telling you that the captives, meaning the Israelite captives, the Jews, the people of Judea, they had woolly hair as though they belonged to the Ethiopian army of Tirhakah. So they had the same hair as the Ethiopians. Sir Austin Henry Laird, who was an Assyriologist born in 1817, he lets you know that these people were in fact Jews, Jewish captives from Lachish. These captives were undoubtedly Jews. Their physiognomy was strikingly indicated in the sculptures. They have the woolly hair as though they belong to the Ethiopians. Now let's do a zoom in on the Lachish reliefs. This is the Assyrian Lachish relief. This is a mid-century African woman's bronze head sculpture. Same exact hair texture, right? This is another, look at that, same exact hair texture as the Lachish reliefs of the Jews in captivity. Right, and just for even more further reference, these are blackamoor sculptures, same hair texture. This is a Sarsen head moor, same head texture. And then we're also going to go to the guy Harry Johnston, who wrote a book, The Negro in the New World, by Sir Harry H. Johnston. We're going to go to page 27, and this is what he has to say. He says, the Elamites, hold on. Yeah. He says, the Elamites of Mesopotamia appear to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and the Syrians. There is a curliness of the hair together with the Negro eye and full lips in the portrait of Assyria, which conveys the idea of an evident Negro element in Babylonia. Right? Let's continue. He's talking about the prognathism. Now, remember, this is all that was said in that book I was reading earlier. It says the Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain shows itself occasionally in the curly hair, the long iron proportions of the skull. The Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Guyana reproduce most strikingly the Assyrian type. It is quite conceivable that the great peninsula of Arabia was once populated as far as its natural conditions allowed by a primitive Negro stock, which may have been latter or partially exterminated by changing in unfavorable conditions of climate and by the aftercoming of the white man and his types, right? Yeah, the white invaders, which give you your light-skinned people that inhabit Syria, parts of the Middle East, period, really. But yeah, so that was the second part of that book as well. So like I said, that was a long lesson for 3 pages, right? Talked about the blacks had the African look. We talked about the Mishnah. We went over the Mishnah of the Talmud. We also went over proving what a moor was. We went over the Portuguese Jews, and furthermore we went into the black Jews in early Europe and the history it entailed. So with that, I say, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. With that, I say peace to the 12. And I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High, Yahawah, in the name of His only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of the Heavenly Father, who is commonly known as God. And yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who is commonly known as Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace. You people listening and learning. You brothers doing this work, truth, and sincerity. And to you others that's been doing this thing before me, man. I say shalom to you all. I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. I'm out. Peace. And my computer froze.